Good morning, everyone. Otsu here. Who else would it be? This is the Observations with Otsu video, my weekly video. As you guys know, I am Otsu. I am here to give you the weekly updates for Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana. There's not really going to be a theme today. I'm kind of just going to have a generic theme of like what's going on here. That's pretty much going to be the title or something similar. To be honest with you, I haven't come up with the title for my thumbnail just yet. I usually do. But the idea is that there's a lot of people that are very confused on the markets. What's going on? Are we bullish? Are we bearish? Are we nothing? Like, how are we interpreting this? Morale is at an all-time low. A lot of people thinking that the entire cycle is over, and I can pretty much guarantee you that it's not, because when the market's actually over and tops, most people are not having that kind of sentiment. They're thinking this is going to go on forever. I'm going to be a gazillionaire in about 3 months, so I'm just going to ride it out and not take any profits. And so that's all kind of dangerous. And right now, we're not in a dangerous position as far as sentiment. We are scared. We are fearful. We're trying to take profits. We're preserving our capital. We're doing things like that. So I'm going to kind of give some commentary on that later on in this video. I think I'll actually try to do Bitcoin first, then go on to that theme, and then cover Ethereum, Solana. I'm going to try something new today and see where that goes, because I'm a little late to posting this. Going to be more analysis driven anyway, so we'll just kind of give that a shot. So anyway, that's the introduction. I also have some scripts, by the way, and some algorithms. You can check that out at the Aaron Pro store that I have. That's going to be on the WOMP link listed down in the description if you're watching on YouTube. If you're watching on X, I'm going to have that link down on the thread, okay? So either one of those are sufficient for you. I don't have sponsors. I don't want sponsors. That is how you can directly support me, and then in turn, I directly support you. It is reciprocal, and then you can deal with me directly if there's any issues or successes as well. That being said, let's get into the video. So first things first, we're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to start with the weekly position here, and then we're going to work our way down. If you're unfamiliar, I cover the weekly time frames. Then I sometimes go to 3-day, but I usually stick on the 1-day as as those two primary time frames. I will look at 3-day or sometimes 2-week if there's more context. Won't go any lower than 1-day usually, although I will sometimes go to lower time frames to see what's going on for current price action. So let's get started with Bitcoin to start with. Now with Bitcoin, we can take a look at this here. I'm going to clear this out so we can kind of redraw this zone. So the last candle that we just closed, we closed bearishly, kind of had a Darth Maul situation going on there, very similar to what we had the previous week as well. It was a bearish candle instead of a bullish one. Honestly, that in and of itself doesn't really mean much. I could try to correlate them as sort of a pseudo fractal, and I'll explain that in just a second what I mean, because there's some data points that we could look at historically and see where we come at from that zone. So one thing I've noticed, obviously, is the trend line. I've kind of had that there. This is going to be your main trend line push into the bullish momentum, and so we could rally from here, and that will be bullish, of course. But the real bullishness won't flip until we get that trend line. That's going to be the first thing that I notice, is that when you have something like this, that is the moment where we can officially flip bullish on the weekly as far as price action goes. Okay, we can come all the way up here, and this could be a retest. Okay, so don't get confused. That was my last week's video where I talked about how green candles can actually be bearish ones because they can give us bearish retests, and that's exactly what we got. Okay, we had a bullish candle right here from last week, almost this exact day from last week, and we actually faded that ever since. Okay, that was the top of the most recent price action. So don't get confused by green candles, or in my case, blue candles or bullish candles, because bullish candles are not necessarily bullish. Okay, and that's where I need to do a dedicated video on this. But a lot of people get confused about bullish and bearish mentalities, bullish and bearish price action. And to be fair, a lot of people that are watching videos like mine and are watching other people out there, and I'm not thinking of anybody in particular, but one person's interpretation of bullish price action is going to be different than someone else's. When somebody says that Bitcoin is bullish, well, why is it bullish? Okay, does that mean it's going to continue to be bullish? Because in my experience, a lot of people when they have something like this, and they have this, right? And so this is the top of the zone, right? They're going to say this is bullish. Okay? They're going to interpret this as bullish price action. They're going to say Bitcoin's really bullish here. I don't. I would tell you that this is bearish, and it's not because I know what's coming. It's because we have a bear divergence, right? We have a bearish consolidation. We just started a pretty wide one at that point in March, and so that is a sign of weakness. Now that doesn't mean that we couldn't have gone higher. We certainly could, but that's where I see the div, I see the consolidation. I would tell you like, hey, you need to watch out. And I hope I did. If I didn't, please call me out on. I don't remember what I exactly said in March and April, and I'm sure it's time stamped on my social media account. But that's the interpretation. I would not say, or I should not say, if I did say it, that this is bullish. Okay. Now, it's more appropriate to say we have had bullish price action, but now we are showing weakness. A divergence is a weakness. Whether or not it is actually going to lead to downward price action, it is still a sign of weakness. There's no follow through yet on this one, right? And we do know that there will be. But what I'm saying is, it's it's been strong and now it's showing weakness. That's what you should say. It has been bullish, but now it's not as bullish because of the weakness that is present. And I think a lot of people really get that confused. Now, going back to this, we're going to cancel this, take a look at the actual price action that we have here. And that's basically just the trend line. As far as the rest of it, we had the drop down. So we had, where's this thing at here? I always forget where this is at. So we had kind of an order block structure here. We had a downward price action, a series of lower highs. And so we had the deviation actually drop down again. So this isn't a very respectable thing. We can get rid of that. That was just for a small example here. And that's kind of where we're at. Now, as far as other things, I've mentioned we had this zone here. This is a swing high order block, I refer to it as. We had the deviation at the divergence. And so this is another reason why I would want to be bearish at this particular point, because we diverged and we had a deviation and a divergence. And you can have you can't have one without the other typically. Like, you can have a deviation without a divergence, but you can't have a divergence without a deviation. And so when we deviated from this, that means that this was much more, the downward price action was much more serious, and then this top was going to be much more toppish than we anticipated. Now, the bad news is we've gone back and forth, and so if you've traded, consistently over the past 6 months, or if you're somebody like me that has looked at the screen literally every single day since then, it's going to be really hard on your psyche, right? You've been going back and forth with this. Is this bullish? Is this bearish? Is this bullish? Is this bearish? And then you get confused, and then you start getting exhausted. Maybe you've lost a little more money than you want to. And so that's kind of it. And that's kind of what the theme was I was going to kind of make with this, is like, what's really going on? I'll explain that more after the Bitcoin section. But this is the swing high order block, and something that I can write down right here. Swing high order block. And so an order block is just a series of candles, but a swing high order block, and that's something that I developed for my system, for my Apex system, which I teach about in my courses, is that's basically just the wicks right here. So from the top of the zone to the wicks, that is your swing high. Okay, and there's also swing low, by the way, which would be something like, this, or something like this, depending on your interpretation of what you're looking for. And it does depend on what you're looking for. And that's not a cop out. That's just a way to help you identify moves or divergences or ways to facilitate supply and demand so that you can trade that better, right? So the swing high order block, that's what that is. When we deviated from that, we went back into the zone. It means that this is not as high convicting as we originally thought. It needs to come back, needs to retest, needs to do something. Sometimes we don't really not know quite sure when that's going to be. And so we can also modify this here. So as far as a bigger one, we could look at this from this zone as well. And actually, you could quantify all of this, honestly. And so that would be more of a bigger context for a higher time frame, like a trend focus. And this one's a bit interesting because we actually deviated, like we said before, but we also deviated from the downside, and then we kind of went back above the zone. And this gives us some more context. We deviated to the highs, we deviated from the lows, we went back into the zone, and we dropped straight back through it. So not only does this tell me that this was not a very respectable, that this is way more respectable. We don't deserve to be up at that high just yet. Okay, we still have some retest to do. And you can also see the current candle and the past two candles are still below this zone. This means that we are trying to retest this area, okay? And so that also tells me that this area right here, probably something like this, is for the weekly, and I'll get rid of this. This is our true area of testing. Okay, if we can break above that, then we're looking back towards this red trend line for a bigger high time frame bull, flip, right? If we come back down here, then we got more chaos to look at, and then we're probably looking here at this overthrow at 52,000. Okay, so that's how we're kind of analyzing that. Now, from the AREN perspective, we have a very wide, extremely wide bullish consolidation, which is a good sign. That is a sign that we should be trending upwards. The wider this is, I say this before, I really need to get an actual video out there for this. I do teach this in the courses, that is the wider it is, the better. And so it's bullish because the bull line is at the bottom, and it's more bullish because of how wide it is from the bearish line. Okay, and so theoretically that means we should be trying to trend upwards. I think bulls have a chance here to just take the life out of some of the bears right now. Now, as far as RSI goes, we need to get above 50. We're really close. We're at 49.33. So we're very close. We could get that before the weekly. Could certainly get that if we close bullish for the weekly. And so we'll see how that operates. I think we can do that. I think that's a pretty easy ask, to be honest with you. And so if we can get above that zone, as I say all this to say, if we close the weekly above 60,200, I think we're good to go for some continuation. Now, again, we still need to go across this red line here to have some longer standing bullish price action. And now you can also quantify this like so. You could actually do something like this, and that's pretty much the same thing. So you have your continuation pattern. This is a continuation pattern technically. It's just a irregular one. So I want that to be a little bit clear. I think the low here also kind of helps you with that. I think that was a good anticipation of that zone. And so this doesn't look too bad. I hope that it does well. We'll see where it goes. It is kind of going green a little bit right now. And so a lot of my premium members are probably a little more happier today than normal. If you're interested in premium, you can check that out. And I also offer, I think I offer free trials. If I don't, let me know. I'm happy to give you some credit for that. So anyway, let's go to the 1 day to kind of analyze this a bit more. And so let's go ahead and erase this again just to give us some extra sense of this. But actually, you know what? I think I'll take it back and see how this can give us the context. I think that's probably better. So this is the zone that we were looking at, the deviation. Now we're kind of trending upward. We had the fade, but this is not significant on the daily. This is more of a weekly situation, so we will get rid of that. And I do want to kind of look at this from a daily perspective, so I'm going to reanalyze this like so. And so this will give us some more context. I'm going to put that there. And so it's interesting because, like, you might say, Otsu, well, you're adjusting this, so like that means it's invalidated or something. Like, I'm trying to validate it and contextualize for each time frame. Okay, this is not valid on the 1 weekly, where the 1 weekly is not valid on the daily. It is according to its own time frame. So this is kind of what we're looking at. It had the deviation here. We're holding above this zone, and I think the 200 EMA is not respected, but it's roughly around this range. So that's another thing to look at as well. We also have this I'm very interested in, because this was your gap and you had your deviation, you went above, deviated to the second time, and so this doesn't really help with current price action, but it does help with the confluence of the trend. So this could give us some insight on sort of a long position here. So let me kind of add this. If we can break above this zone, I think this could make for a decent move to the upside, or at least to this double top. That's kind of what I'm looking at, about a 4R position. Not necessarily saying that's a trade that I want to do, but I think that that's valid. I think that we could be turning around here, and I kind of hope that we do. I think, again, I'll explain that more in the theme, but I think usually at these types of markets are usually when we turn around. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to delete that and go here. The AREN has actually flipped to the bull side, very small one. So this is going to be interesting, because this is a sign that although bears this is a sign of two things. Bulls have taken over, but bulls are weak. Okay, so this remains a situation. But bears are very weak too. So is the weak bull trend stronger than the weak bear trend? That's kind of what we're looking at. We're fighting for who's going to be not the weakest. And so if the bulls work it out, then that could give us a chance for that slow grind upwards again. And so we could see something. We could consolidate honestly till September. And that would actually be bullish in this sense because we're kind of grinding upwards. We kind of see that with Aave that's just starting to push up. But we look at this from the weekly perspective here. You had your slow move this side. Now you're kind of trending upwards. That's kind of the same thing that you see on Bitcoin right now. So that's the situation with that. RSI is not at 50, but I am going to set an alert at 50 just in case there is. That can give us some momentum to kind of work in our favor. So that's Bitcoin in a nutshell. I think it looks better than people are kind of thinking it is. And I'll transition to the theme of this video, but I'll say this before I get there, is that a lot of people are very uncertain at the markets. They don't know what to do. They're kind of frozen. And this is how they end up not looking at some of these things, but more so just looking at the bigger picture, right? So like, take it from a personal, not me personal perspective per se, but like just from someone in their real life, like let's say they're struggling in life, like they're struggling with finances or whatever, but they got a family, they got a roof under their head, they got air conditioning, they still have things that they can feel happy about, or at least, whether or not you feel blessed about that, that's your personal, opinion. But as far as like, hey, I still have the things I need to continue to do better. And that's kind of that's probably not the best example, but that's kind of how I feel with Bitcoin right now, is because, okay, yeah, I don't have an actual fixed idea on what Bitcoin's doing every single hour, but I have an idea of what it's going to be doing for the weekly perspectives and the monthly perspectives. Okay, and that's kind of what we need to focus on, and I think that's okay. I've mentioned this in several videos that now is probably the time to look at education, things like that, and I think that that's one reason why. Sometimes the market will give you the opportunity to relax, and I think this is one of these times. Anyway, with that being said, I'm gonna kind of gravitate towards the theme of this video. That's Bitcoin talk. We're gonna just have a little fireside chat, and then we'll go to Ethereum and Solana. All right, so I kind of want to take a different tempo for the next 3 to 5 minutes. I'll kind of keep this short. I tend to ramble, but I kind of want to discuss the nature of how people are trading right now. This is kind of going to be a hybrid technical analysis slash financial analysis. Not that I'm trying to correlate the two, but I am trying to talk about two at the same time. Because right now on X, there's a lot of uncertainty in the markets as far as people not willing to trade positions. There's, and also engagement tends to be a little bit lower, even as far as people like trading. You don't see a lot of people trying to trade. You see, you still see the prominent people doing their thing, but you see a lot of disinterest. You also see a lot of less volume sometimes as well. And I think these are very interesting thoughts to look at, or very, topics, I should say, to take a look at, because it's not quite fear and it's not quite greed. We're kind of in this weird market. We're in the crab mentality, of course, as well, as a lot of people have kind of illustrated this as well. And I also want to kind of take another step back and realize, like, crypto Twitter is not as big of a thing anymore. And I hate to be that guy to tell you that. I was pretty much born into CT in 2017. Okay, I've been there for quite a while, and as much as I try to keep a level head on both sides of the fence, but we've grown so much since then. Okay, I just recently put out a post that I think 9 of the top 10, or I should say 8 of the top 10 people that have the most Bitcoin are institutions. The only ones you can't include are Satoshi Nakamoto, which, as far as we know, we don't know who that person was, or were they people, or was it an agency? We don't know. But the point is, that's been inactive, right? The only other entity that you may not consider an institution could either be the United States government or Michael Saylor but it was listed under MicroStrategy, right? So he could be considered an institution in that regard, but most of it is, he's been on the forefront of that, right? He's the image bearer of that allocation, right? So if you exclude those two, the rest of them are institutions like BlackRock, things like that, and even the Chinese government. So that being said, like, the institutions are here, okay, and I think what a lot of people didn't seem to understand back in 2017-18 is that they wanted those institutions to get here. I remember seeing that, and I remember thinking to myself, I was going to Jack in the Box, actually. I don't know if you guys have heard of that before, and it's for, here in America, or at least in the Midwest, it was a very popular chain. I think a lot of them closed actually since then, but I remember being there and thinking, I need to buy as much Bitcoin as I can. Okay, and that's probably why I was buying 99-cent tacos as well, because I wanted to kind of save up. Okay, and I unfortunately I didn't save up as much as I wanted to. A lot of that was all thought and talk and not enough action, and all my regrets as far as crypto goes since then have usually been I either traded too much or I didn't save enough money to make more. Okay, and that's kind of the trajectory I want to talk about for this, sort of chat, so to speak, is that a lot of people are very uncertain on the markets. And one of the reasons you're uncertain about the markets is because you're trying to trade for opportunities, okay? But the problem is you don't have to trade to find these opportunities. You can buy and hold for opportunities, or you can sell and wait for something to happen, okay? There's other things, like my son is getting at the age where he does not like the word wait, okay? Or no. He's already used to not liking the word no. But like my son has no sense of patience, okay? And sometimes I don't either. A lot of adults don't either. But the idea is that you might have to just be patient for opportunities. Like, nobody wants to be patient for an opportunity. Nobody wants to wait, okay? Nobody wants to find or things like that. They want now, like they want instant things now, and if they can't find something instant now, they're going to try to find something instant elsewhere. Okay, whether that's gambling or the big thing right now, and it seems like, is sports betting. There were statistics showing that a lot of people that do sports betting get their money from investments, and one of the reasons they're getting their investment money out is because it's not giving them enough money fast enough, where they literally try to do sports gambling with that. And whether or not they make money, that's not the point I'm trying to make. If they do, whatever. I'm not. It is what it is. I'm not touching that per se. But the thing is, people are trying to seek ways to get things faster. Okay, but most of the things in my life, crypto or otherwise, has been something that has been delayed gratification. Right, waiting 9 months to see my son born, for example. Right, things like that, or waiting. Me and my wife, she's from a different country. Okay, and there was from the time there was about a 2 year period where I knew that we were going to get married, and we had only seen each other for 1 month out of that 2 year period. Okay, and so those are the things you kind of got to wait for, and you wait for them because that they're worth it, right? And the same with trading, right? Same with Bitcoin. Like, you hold Bitcoin because you think it's going to be worth it 3 months down the road or a year down the road. It's the same reason why the whole term hodl came into play. The guy did not know whether he should buy or whether he should sell, so he just wanted to hold it. Okay, hodling is not meant to just hold through the worst. Okay, that was always a misnomer. It was meant to hold under uncertainty. And that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean you can't lose money. The guy was aware of that. He was also drunk at the time too. But the idea is like, you don't know what's going to have the best opportunity benefit for you. Okay, the guy at the time, and it's in a Bitcoin forum. You could check it out, or I can link it. But he understood that there was an opportunity cost to selling, knowing that the price could go up. He also understood that there was an opportunity cost to buying in case it could have went down. And so the best opportunity cost was just to do nothing and let the market sort itself out. And that's kind of where we're at now. We're in a position where the markets don't really know what the markets are doing. Most of us don't know what they're doing either. There's a lot of people I very highly respect that don't know what the market is doing. Okay? And I agree with them. You have structures like this where this is not respected. It's not respected with the EMA. You go to Ethereum, which we'll talk about later, has not respected the zone. There's a lot of coins that have lost their respective structures or their weekly areas and things like that. And I say all of that to say is even the coins don't know what they're doing. Okay? And so when you find out that nobody or nothing really knows what's going on, you just kind of have to wait it out. And I've mentioned this in the past 7 days in premium about capital preservation. Preserve your capital when things like this is going on. And that goes relative to the HODL guy. When I say capital preservation, I had to clarify this yesterday. When I say capital preservation, I don't mean don't trade. I mean put yourself in a situation where you're going to lose the least amount of money. You play defense. Don't play offense, play defense. And that's what that HODL guy was doing. He was playing defense, okay? He was preserving his capital by just doing nothing because he even admitted himself that he was too dumb enough to not know if he should buy or sell, so he's just doing nothing. And I think that's actually quite smarter than 99% of the people that currently trade the market. And so you got to have that bit of a patience. Now for that, he was exacerbated as far as that goes, but the point is a lot of people don't know what's going on, and I think going into more of the theme side of this is that people are not taking this very well. And so I just want to ask yourself, like, how are you doing? How are you doing in the market? How long? Take a look at some things that you've been doing. Like, for example, how long have you been doing this? I have been doing this since 2017. Okay? Ask yourself, how long have you been doing this? How much money have you made? Okay? Do not look at how much money you could have made. Okay? Because everybody could have made a lot more. If I just would have, I can tell you there's at least 3 situations in my life where if I did something different in crypto, I would be fully retired. Like enough to where I would not even be on Twitter anymore. And I'm not saying I wouldn't if I didn't have money. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is I would have 1,000 times more money than I have now if I was just a little bit smarter on a few different things, or I understood something, or I didn't have some sort of in real life situation going on. But you can't look at it that way. You can't look at life is going to go on because you don't know. What if you spend your entire next 3 years on the charts, you do nothing else, you neglect your family, you neglect everything, and then you still don't make money. You don't know if that's going to happen. Okay, so things are just going to happen that just happen. So you can't look at how much you could have made, but look at how much you did. Are you satisfied with that? And take a look at things like how is your situation in life going on? Do you have a family? Okay, if you do, you have a spouse potentially, probably, and you have a kid or more kids to take care of, or maybe you're in college. A lot of my followers that talk to me are in college or they're progressing towards a license of some sort, and that's going to complicate situations, right? You got those things to worry about, and those are real things. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to just keep my Bitcoin and just hope it doubles by the time I'm graduating college so I can pay off my tuition. It doesn't work like that necessarily. Life doesn't operate that way. It's much more harsher than that. And you got to kind of make those situations. Like I don't blame someone for saying that they can't make as much money as they can because they have something going on in their life, because that is life. And there's really no point for you to stay on the charts till you're 70, 80 years old and then you don't have a life to live. Whether you got the money or not doesn't matter. See what I'm saying? I'm kind of gravitating away from the theme, but the point is I'm focusing on the person behind the chart right now because these things matter. Okay, you're trading for a reason. You're trading because you want more money. Maybe that's for material things. Maybe you're a young guy and trying to live that kind of life, and whatever. That's on you. But the point is, everybody's trading for a reason. Okay, and so how are you doing with that reason? Like, how are you navigating your life? How are you but particularly, how are you navigating through this current juncture of the market? And that's kind of where I want to bring it back home here. It's like I'm not trying to talk about what you should or shouldn't be doing with your life. I have things that I can say, but the point is, are you making your situation worse by trying to trade something that isn't tradable right now, necessarily? Or at least isn't worth trading right now? Or isn't giving you the opportunities that you had 2 years ago to trade? Okay, and that's what I'm talking about. There's going to be plenty of opportunities to trade, and there's plenty of opportunities not to trade. You need to know which is which. Okay? Like, I live in an area where we have 4 seasons. It would be foolish of me to plant a flower during the wintertime. It wouldn't last very long. Okay? Now, some plants and trees do survive during the winter, some don't. Okay? And it's the same situation. Learn at what point you should trade and what point you should kind of stay to the side. And that's going to be healthier for you. And kind of just rounding this off now. When you find out that this is not a good tradable opportunity, you can step back, you can take a break, you can rest, you can spend time with your family, you can go out and enjoy yourselves, you could touch grass, as they say in the CT world. You could learn a course. I have courses available. I'm not trying to sell them to you with this. I'm just saying, like, I have materials that can help increase your knowledge of trading, right? Or whatever it may be. Or yeah, honestly, something as simple as, we took a two day road trip the other day, like a 2-day vacation. It was great. It was just a reset. We just needed a reset, just time away. Okay? And so I think that that's good. It helps you understand when the markets are ready for you, that you can trade with, once the market gets more active and ready. First of all, it's going to be easier to trade. Second of all, you're going to be more rested, and so you're going to be more aware, because a lot of this is a mental game as well, unless you're just fully running algorithms. In addition to that, it's going to allow you to appreciate the markets as a cycle and appreciate how much capital you have saved on the way. So anyway, that's kind of the chat version of this. Let's go ahead and go to Ethereum and Solana. All right, so let's take a look at Ethereum. We're going to start with the weekly. Kind of round this out. I think Ethereum and Solana will go a little bit faster, mainly because we have the big context with Bitcoin. We kind of have the structure about how confusing the markets are, so I don't need to kind of rehash that. So let's get started with Ethereum. I'm going to erase all this and start with the last previous candle where we actually closed bullish. And so in that sense, it was a little bit stronger last week than Bitcoin. That's not saying much because neither one really did anything. It's just two sides of the same coin, or two sides of like a Darth Maul candle or whatever. And so that's kind of that structure. Now, we did have a downward move three weeks prior to that in a row, and so that is part of it. We do have a wide bullish consolidation that is very similar to Bitcoin, so we could see sort of a V-shaped reversal. As far as price action goes, it's a little more complicated. And RSI, by the way, is just kind of floating around. Unfortunately, not very important on this weekly. I would like to see it above, as long as it's between the 40 and the 50 range, I'm not too concerned. If it's below 40, that's a sign of much weakness. It's always going to be weakness below 50, but below 40 is even more for me. And so 50 is where it kind of flips. Right now, it's in no man's land. Not too concerned. Now, the thing with the price action standpoint is you really can't do too much. If I want to kind of do an entire structure like so, it's below the mid, okay? So that's not really good. We also see kind of a double bottom retest here. And so this makes sense from a swinging low perspective. But this also doesn't give us context with this gap, okay? And so there's not too much to work with here. You could also have this structure like so, and that can help us a little bit more because this at least gives us a bottom to work with. And you also have this zone to work with as well. Not quite accurate, but good enough. And so this is a discombobulation of things, but this does give us some context that we had your range here, we had your double bottom, you had your follow through. This was a bearish breaker, so this should retest to at least 29.50, and that number might be if you're in premium, you are aware of what that number should mean. And so that's the retest point for that zone. The bottom is going to be where we're at now at rough or earlier last week at 2,500. And so now we're kind of in the zone between 2,500 and 3,000. That's pretty much the best we got as far as price action. And I think that that's good enough because we actually have a structure here that it actually wicked above, so that gives us a good support structure. When we have a strike through like this, it gets complicated because sometimes this could be retested and should be retested, sometimes it's not. And so how do you kind of gauge that? Well, you unfortunately you just got to take them one at a time because you don't know if it's going to retest. So you have a higher, you have a mid probability that that won't happen. So you need to treat this as support until it goes back below, or if it goes back below in the blue. And so that's kind of how we can look at that. Now, you could see this as something like so, and you could kind of target the top here, about a 3.8. I don't really like that for several reasons, however, so I'm going to kind of delete this because this block here, there's also a high chance that this could come back down and wick as low as the mid here at 2,300 before it comes back up. Now, I think that's also a low probability, but that could happen. And if that happens, you're going to get stopped out. But if you try to prepare for that, then the R value is not going to be worth the trade. And we're talking about weekly here. And so a 2R on a weekly, 3R on a weekly even, is not that good. And so that's something that you have to kind of work with. Now, this is kind of what I go back to where Bitcoin and kind of the theme of this is you just need to take this as more of a high time frame trend and kind of just ride this out. Whereas, for example, you could buy here. If it goes down to 2,300, you could buy there. It goes down to 2,000, you could buy there. And so DCA makes more sense in these particular cases until market structure sorts itself out. When the market structures are not very integral, you need to look at things from a DCA perspective, a trend perspective, capital preservation perspective. You need to focus on defense. Okay, that's the thing. There will be a time for offensive trades, and that'll be a good time, but now is not that time. And so that's kind of how I see the weekly. Aaron, very wide bullish consolidation, much like Bitcoin. So you have a higher probability chance that we could go up. Kind of had a little bit of a surge. Seems like it's kind of fading just a little bit. Like I said, RSI is doing pretty much nothing. So on the daily here, not much else to work with too. You had this deviation. You had a divergence actually, and you had the deviation. So that's pretty good. We're kind of holding this zone. I would probably say as long as we're holding this, I think it's pretty good. And that's pretty much it. We have a bullish cross, which is good, but low conviction like Bitcoin as well. A lot of these are very similar. And so the situation is, it's not like things are technically bullish here. So based on Aaron, things are technically bullish, but they're pretty weak. So the lower the cross, the weaker that is, right? And we can see that with the price action. You have the divergence, you have the reclaims of support, things like that, but you don't have any follow through. So we have evidence that the bulls care about these levels, but we don't have follow through. And I'll be honest, people like me, for example, I am not interested to buy here. And the reason I'm not is because I already have. I already have bought here. I've already bought lower. I'm not interested in these price points. I'm done with these price points. I've pretty much bought what I wanted to buy. Now, if I see an opportunity to, if I know that we're going to double our money here, then maybe I will buy. But there's a mix of, all right, I've already bought, like Bitcoin, I've bought it, 17,000. At Ethereum, I bought, below, I think like 1,500 or whatever. So, I'm not interested to buy at these levels. And so, because I'm not even underwater, right? But if I do know that this is going to double, then I'm more interested. But we don't know. So it's a combination of I'm already good in my positions, I'm very comfortable in my positions, and there's also market uncertainty whether this could go up or down. If there's just an equal chance that this could go down to 2,000, and if it does, I'd be much more interested to buy at 2,000 than at 25. And that's kind of how that works. So let's go ahead and go straight to Solana. Kind of work this out. It's slightly green for today. Now the weekly perspective here, we have a double candle as well, and so we're kind of getting that crawl up. This is actually a really good sign. I mentioned this on Litecoin, I think last year, where it had kind of like a slow crawl. And I know Litecoin's probably not the best coin to talk about, but it consolidates, and usually this actually is a good thing. And I don't like doing the whole inverse chart and saying well, that means it's going to consolidate and break upwards. I used to be a big fan of that, And I actually don't like it now because the markets don't behave that way. Okay, it's good to give you context on the market, but this is a terrible analysis for high time frame because the markets don't behave this way. They don't behave in a bi-directional way when it comes to high time frame trends. Okay, now if you're talking about a 30-minute chart, okay, that's a different story. But when trying to invert this, I know from experience that most of the time this does not come back down. This actually goes back up. And I could be wrong. Doesn't matter if I'm wrong. The point is that that's what I learned from experience, and I'm looking at past experience. That does not equate to future performance, as everybody knows, but that's the observation that I have. This is called observations with Otsu. So that being said, that's kind of what I'm looking at, honestly. Now we actually had a high bearish cross on this, but it's very thin. So that means that the trend is very bearish right now, but it's going to have a very low probability of success if the bulls can maintain. And so you're going to see a double line all the way down to here. Could be as low as November. Honestly, it could take that long. Now, I'll go to price action in a second. I just forgot about that. But RSI is above 50. Also good. It's very good. I think Solana is by far the best of the three. Now, as far as price action goes, again, you can't really quantify this very well. You are kind of above the mid at 129. 129 is probably my big key area of interest. As long as we're above that, I know it's cheesy and I know it's very basic, but that does work. You know, we are above the entire structure of this zone, and so that is valid. Now, another thing, I mean, we can kind of look at it from this perspective, and we're kind of holding below the mid. You know, and that's one reason why we're kind of struggling as well, because if you try to force first of all, you can't really force anything here. There's nothing to kind of work with. But that's one reason why we're struggling, is because we're in a lot of, you know, like this area, for example. This is a good midline area. You had your order block. You had a bearish breaker followed by another bearish breaker retest, and now we're kind of stuck in that zone. And that's one reason, because that is an important level, and so we're kind of working that out, and that could lead to a slow grind upward, I should say, and that could take a month. It could take 2 months. That's why I say I'm much more interested in buying. That's why I said with the theme of this video, like holding is a good way to be defensive in your trades. Technically holding is capital preservation because you're not making an actual move. You don't have to buy or sell at any particular day. Okay? And if you don't understand that, you really need to. And you need to for your own benefit. Because I've seen so many people round trip a trade where they buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, and they do that for like a month, and then they don't make any money. When they could have made some money if they didn't do that. Or they wouldn't have made money anyway. They would have been broke even, right, or break even for the month. But they didn't waste their time. Because this is not necessarily about making money right now. This is about wasting your time. Okay? And so the great thing about buying long term is that you can buy it and forget it. When I bought at 16,800 Bitcoin, I forgot about it. I literally bought it, and I didn't even look at it for 4 months. I didn't even look at it for 4 months. And then I didn't even sell any of it until maybe about 6 months ago, okay? And I've sold about half of that, and I think I bought a little bit more back. But the thing is, you don't have to think about it all the time, okay? There is a lot of solace in knowing that things are just going to kind of stay in place for the next week or month or even 6 months, where you could benefit later. Now, if you are a trader, like if you are coming from this from an active trade perspective, let's say you already have long term, let's say you already have spot, let's say you have your stocks or other investments, right, or gold, and maybe you are frustrated to trade. That's why I say focus on your education instead, or focus on your mental health instead, because both of those things will help you trade better. They should. So anyway, that's that in a nutshell. Now let's go ahead and go to the daily to kind of round this out. We have this structure, this continuation pattern, and I do like this. This is not quite accurate here on the daily, but this is something that I guess I can adjust this like so. And so you had your deviation, you got your retest here. Now this is interesting because this could hold, but it also may not. And I know it's not helpful per se, but you have the bullish cross here, waiting for this cross above the 50. And again, this is that slow crawl that I'm talking about. So we might go back and forth to the end of September even before we get a result. And I know it's gonna be frustrating, but we'll see how that goes. We're holding the zone, and that's kind of why I focus on the theme of this video, like how are you doing? Because some of these zones are holding, and some of these levels don't look bad. You know, like Ave. I mentioned Ave before. I think Ave looks really good here on the weekly. This is a very very good chart. Okay, the only bad thing about this chart is that it will take until 2025 to get that 5x. Okay, but that's what I'm saying. Are you willing to buy at 119 or whatever to wait for 500, 600 per coin in 6 months? I'm not saying it will, but I think, like making 500% profits for doing 30 seconds of work is pretty good. That's hard to beat, and even in a world like today. So, just saying, it's kind of an observation that I see. So hopefully that works out. Um, that being said, we can kind of round out the video. All right, so kind of a quick summary. It's not going to suffice for everything that I've talked about, but the first thing I talked, as far as the theme, I discussed like, hey, what are you guys doing in the markets? You probably shouldn't be trading right now. You should be thinking about how to maximize your opportunity costs in the future instead of right now, thinking about education or going out and enjoying life instead of trying to trade something that's not really that tradable right now, or something that could be easier to trade in the future. Okay, for Bitcoin, we talked about this weekly perspective, this continuation pattern looking pretty good as long as we hold the zone. If we can hold above 60,200, I believe, for the weekly, it's looking pretty good. For Ethereum, kind of within the zone here, not as good as Bitcoin or Solana, but we are below this zone right here, or at this support, I should say. And that gives me a moderate conviction that we could hold here or hold close to here. And I looked at Ethereum more from a DCA perspective. I also did not add this, but I also think Ethereum is much, much, much weaker as far as financial or as far as FA, fundamental analysis, because Solana has kind of taken the reins for that. And also, a lot of people are not focusing on base. Base is something that's actually increasing very well. I think they're going to take a lot of market share next cycle. I honestly think base is going to be the ecosystem of the next cycle, not this one, but the next one. And that might start as early as the top of this cycle. So just because I say next cycle doesn't mean that's going to be 4 years away. That could be as soon as 6 months from now. So when I say next cycle, I look at things from top to top. Okay, so from the top of this current cycle, wherever that may be, we won't know honestly at the day that happens. But that's where I think base is going to start taking some market share from Solana, which is Solana has taken market share from Ethereum. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to joke on Ethereum, but I do think Ethereum's day has potentially gone. And some coins like Aave will do well, of course, but I think Ethereum as a whole, I think focusing on Solana, focusing on base, I think is where you're gonna probably see your best benefit. And then going to Solana, we look at this from a weekly perspective as well, as we do for these videos. Had a continuation pattern as well, as long as this holds above 129 on the low side. So down here, I think that's going to be the best thing optimally. We want to kind of get above this 150 zone and see how this works. But overall, things are looking good, and it's above the 50 as well. I think things are looking better than we expect. I think, again, a lot of this is market mentality. On market tops, for example, nobody thinks like, oh, the top is in, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. No, they're thinking like, oh, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to buy like 5 yachts and do all this other stuff, right? But when things are like at their lows, like I still remember buying below 20,000, everybody's just freaking out. Like I literally had people block me because I bought below 20. And I still to this day don't know why they're so offended by me thinking that I'm going to be a buyer, right? Because I know that they wanted like 10,000 Bitcoin, 8,000 Bitcoin, but you don't get it. Sometimes you don't get it, and you can't always expect to get what you want. You need to work with what you got, with the conditions that you have, instead of expecting like, oh, I'm going to go out fishing and get the biggest fish ever, or I'm going to go deer hunting and get this 20-point buck. Like the reality is, you get what you get with the conditions you have. Okay, and so you work in that regard. Anyway, that's the video. Let me know what you think. Links down in the description for YouTube. If you're on X, you're going to get it in a thread. I'll see you next time. Have a good week.